Okay, our keynote today is Dan Vizzini. And I don't have a bio on Dan, so I'm going to have to wing it. But I've known Dan for over 20 years. He was with the Bureau of Environmental Services. He left the Bureau. He's with a firm now. He'll tell you about what he's doing. But he has a lot of insight into this issue of the economics that we want to talk a lot about today. So Dan Vizzini, please. Please welcome. Do you know which buttons you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
There you go.
I told myself I would be up here. There you go.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Cool.
Okay, a couple things before I get started. I'd like a show of hands of how many of you are here from businesses that are in the business of either designing, supplying, or constructing, or maintaining eco-roofs and green roofs. Oh, it's most of you. Great, great. And how many are here from academia, or the research community? Great. From government agencies. Okay. What about employers or corporations that might be, or property owners that might be interested in eco-roofs? Great. Okay, so that kind of covers the waterfront. And then all of you, how many of you live in Portland? Right. And all of you are, I want you to think of yourselves not only in your roles, professional roles, but also in your role as a citizen of this community, of your own community, and as a citizen, so to speak, of your business as well. That is, you have a citizen type role within your businesses to promote sustainability and to grow the business at the same time. And you have a responsibility as citizens in community to increase the resilience and quality of life of the communities you live in. And I'd like you to think about those things as we move forward. A little bit about me. I was born and raised on the Delaware River, along the Delaware River in New Jersey, outside of Trenton, north of Trenton. Spent 4 years in college on the banks of the Charles in Boston at BU, where I learned just enough economics to be dangerous without being dull. I think. Moved out to Oregon in '79 and settled at the confluence of the Willamette and Columbia. And so from a psychological point of view, rivers have always been a part of this sort of inner landscape I carry around, and I can't imagine living anywhere but along rivers and the landscape that feeds rivers, the watersheds, the life sheds that feed rivers. So that orients me in the world. I have worked in public service, or I worked in public service for over 30 years. 26 of them with the City of Portland, and the last 14 with the Bureau of Environmental Services. And my career began in budgeting, in public finance, where your career path is defined by how creatively you can say no to any funding proposal. I didn't stay in budgeting long. It was really boring. And over the years, I got into finance, the finance side of public works and infrastructure improvements. And then late in my career at BES, I got into this whole notion of marketplaces and how you could advance public policy through private marketplace mechanisms, and how you could marry or align public interests and private interests through creative uses of markets. I'm really happy to say that the Ecoroof program at BES has embraced many of the principles that came out of a project that I happen to have the opportunity to manage, called the Portland Marketplace Study. many of the elements of how the Ecoroof program is constructed and run, the whole notion of having these kinds of gatherings grows out of this idea that public goods, public services, public goals can be advanced, maybe even accelerated by aligning those goals with local economic actors and community actors. And so I'm very, when Matt Berlin asked me if I'd be willing to, first of all, it's a very tricky guy. He asked me if I'd be willing to do a presentation at this conference, and then he asked, and then when I said yes, then he came back and said, well, would you mind doing the keynote? And so I've been obsessing about this for quite a while. I'm going to start with, and I have to say that in the process of developing this presentation, I went through a kind of, I had a cathartic moment, and I'm going to make some statements during this presentation that I didn't think I was going to make when I started doing the research to put this presentation together. So, kind of surprised me. I want to thank Matt for pushing me to do this because without that responsibility, I don't know that I would have gotten where I landed today. And I think we ought to thank Matt and everyone who's helped organize this symposium and the sponsors for making this day possible. So if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. So all things start with a simple, powerful idea. And here's Tom Lipton's garage back in 1997. And from this, the idea catalyzed into something really remarkable, a vision of what a city landscape could actually look like. In this case, on the Central East Side industrial area, and even beyond the Central East Side, imagining what Mock's Bottom could look like with green roofs, in effect reconnecting the natural habitat that from the river up through Mock's Bottom and Mock's Crest and into North Portland. When I saw these images when I was at the Bureau of Environmental Services, while they were provocative, I thought they were a pipe dream. And the public finance budgeting guy inside of me looked at this and said, there's just no way, this is totally impractical. And the political economist in me said, there's no way that you can balance out the cost of doing this in a way that would gain the kind of public support needed to make it happen, either from a regulatory point of view or a public finance point of view. But in the course of doing work on this presentation, I discovered this photo, and here's Stuttgart. And suddenly, this and this look remarkably similar, and this is real, whereas this is a simulation. And that picture blew me away. Suddenly, the idea of doing this in Portland was very possible. And what it took for Stuttgart to do this is possible in Portland. And I guess that was a really sort of profound thought that after years of being a skeptic, it suddenly feels like we're in that adjacent possible where this is possible. Whereas in 1987, this may not have been possible. When Stuttgart did this in 1987, began this in 1987, I don't know that Portland would have politically or from a public finance point of view would have been there, but it's possible now. This is an aerial photo of this same area of town, and there have got to be 20 or so eco-roofs. In fact, there's one, let's see. Yeah. This is a building. This is a multi-story building, but from the sky, it looks like the landscape. That blew me away. And then you have, this is all green roof. This is green roof. All of this is green roof. It's just blows me away. So here's another view of that area. And now here's the Pearl. This is Burnside at the bottom, and we're looking up. And we have a few projects, green roof projects here and here, and I think here. And I don't know that I included the picture, but there's something on the roof here, and when I zoomed in on it, it was artificial turf and artificial bushes on a patio. It is the most bizarre green roof I've ever seen. But you know, can we do what Stuttgart did in the Pearl or on the Inner East Side and beyond? Can we do it citywide? So I set out to try and figure out what would happen if in 1987 Portland had adopted Stuttgart's regulations. We already have the incentives. If we had adopted Stuttgart's regulations on new flat roofs and applied it to the Pearl and the Central East Side. And the results are that we would have added 1.8 million, by my estimate, 1.8 million square feet of new eco-roofs by just doing that regulation. And assuming that we adopted it in '87 but didn't implement it until 1990 to allow for the inventory of permitted projects to clear through the system. So this is a remarkable finding, because I look at this and it's not just the square footage of the eco-roofs, but it's what aesthetically does downtown begin to look like with that much eco-roof, and what does it mean for the heat island effect and the air quality and the quality of life in downtown. And so I ran these numbers, and then I went one step further and I said, well, what if we were to have a program beginning in 2015 and that ran through 2035, and it phased in the requirements for eco-roofs on new construction. And what I did was I looked at buildings, I looked at properties that were either vacant, were more than 50 years old, or where the building value was less than the value of the land currently. So my target population were properties where the building value was depreciated enough that there was a potential for redevelopment, properties where it was vacant, and properties where the age of the building was such that they may be a candidate for redevelopment. And then I took percentages of those over time, rather than thinking, oh, they're all going to do it all at once. And what I came up with was 168 acres of new eco-roofs between now and 2035. 62% of the available eco-roof area covered with green roofs of one kind or another. And then I sort of ran the costs based on $15 a square foot in current dollars, and it compared that to the current market value of these properties. The current market value, not the redeveloped market value, so this is a really conservative number, 4% on average in these two areas. 4% of the eco-roof represented 4% of the market value currently, which seemed to me to be plausible, particularly if we were to offer a low-income, or not low-income, a low-interest loan program to help make this happen, if we added that to the incentive program that we already have. These are remarkable. And this is only looking at the Pearl and the Central East Side. If we were to go back to these numbers and think about from the late 80s through which was at the end of an economic recession, through the economic expansion in the 90s, if you were to think about areas of town like Mox Bottom, Rivergate, Columbia South Shore, the acreage of new green roofs that could have been built in those 15 years or so would have transformed Portland in ways that we would have benefits for generations to come. It's quite a powerful idea looking back and thinking what was possible, but I'm really interested in trying to figure out now, and this is somebody who was really skeptical about the Central East Side plan. I'm really interested in the power of this and the idea that collectively we can work on both the politics and economics of how to make this happen in Portland so that Portland looks like this. So, like I said, we began with Tom's Roof in '96. I got some statistics from Matt about the propagation of eco-roofs in Portland and charted those. The period of time from '96 to 2006, the distribution of the eco-roofs by square footage are represented in the pie chart. So what's encouraging about this pie chart is that the majority of the eco-roofs built during the early adopter pioneer stage of any of this transformation are commercial, not municipal, not governmental. I was surprised by this pie chart. I would have expected that most of the early adopted eco-roofs would have been driven by public building developments, because that's sort of how things get started. But in this case, the FAR, I think the FAR incentive in particular, and the LEED building movement, the living building movement, the green building movement, whatever you want to call it, has created this opportunity. And then on top of that, we have a community of professionals in Portland that very early on wanted to make Portland a hub for this kind of work, both for ecological reasons and for economic reasons. So, but then you had this jump, and I said 2007, but because I think that's when we were talking about graded green, or when Sam Adams declared that he wanted to do graded green, but I don't think the money really started flowing until 2008. But you can see this quantitative change when direct public dollars beyond the FAR bonus kick in, and we developed this capacity in BES to support widespread adoption of eco-roofs and incentivize them. So we had this very nice leap here, from here to here. And the big question mark is, well, what the hell do we do from 2011 on? How do we get another leap? And how do we get a leap after that? And then one of the things that has really been interesting to watch is what we've done, what Matt has done in particular in social media to propagate this idea in the community. And so here's a chart that shows the hits on the website and how they fluctuate. And you can see the peaks really occur around the Eco-Roof events. But rather than them kind of staying at a low level, kind of peaking and then dropping down to a low level, what Matt has been able to do by adding video and photographs and soliciting testimonials from people who've done projects and the like, is to really grow the audience on the website for these ideas and this information and this information sharing. And this is absolutely critical to where we need to go. But essentially, we are here, and the question is, can we be here? And this graph only is showing what's possible in the Pearl and in the Central East Side. This doesn't include the rest of the city. It would be off the chart if we were to have a citywide requirement for new construction of flat roofs that they be green. But how do we bridge this gulf here? And I specifically created a space that's from 2011, we're in 2012 now, to 2015, because I think it's going to take that much time to A, get the public policies in place and the political support in place, and B, to allow for the commencement of new contracts, building contracts, development projects in the permitting system that would come under the regulations. So, so the idea is that first of all, we need to continue to accelerate and nurture what we're doing, but at the same time, can we create this possibility, the framework, the infrastructure for this, for achieving this higher level of activity? And that chart actually reminds me of Moore's chasm, which is a principle. Actually, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just ideas get recycled over and over again over time. The guy who came up with this is a guru in the information technology world. In 1962, okay, I began talking about how do we go from innovators to early adopters to the first phase of broad adopters to the great majority. How do we go through that? I was talking about that in the Stormwater Marketplace project in 2008, 2009, and then I discovered this guy Moore in 1992. I had already mapped all of this out, but what he identified was this point early on where all of the true believers, the folks who've drunk the Kool-Aid, have gotten done with their stuff. How do you move it beyond that to a broader population? How do you get across this chasm and then get involve the majority of folks? And this chart shows in Moore's work how you get from 0 to 100% participation, what that curve looks like. So assuming that you're even going to get to 100% participation, it's kind of, the shape of the adoption rate looks kind of like this over time. So what we need to do is figure out, if we're here, how do we get to this body of potential projects? And part of it has to do with incentives, but incentives only go so far. Part of it has to do with messaging. Part of it has to do with the work we do collectively in a coordinated way to sell this idea. Part of it has to do with regulation. So Portland, kicked off Ecoroof, the Ecoroof movement, I think it's safe to say, in the United States with Tom's Roof and with our Ecoroof incentive program, the FAR program, in the mid-2000s. And this is a list of initiatives, public policy initiatives that have followed on around the country. All of them either involving incentives of some kind, tax credits, or FAR bonuses. But we really haven't kept pace with the leading cities in the country. This is a chart that shows, and I'm particularly focusing on DC and Chicago and New York to some extent. These are places where this stuff is really being promoted in a very serious way. And in Washington, D.C.'s case, I mean, they have a target out there for 20 million square feet of eco-roofs by 2020. And they've got a lot of flat roofs in D.C. that also are publicly owned flat roofs. So they may be actually able to get there. But we need to figure out, because right now we're probably in this range if we count, or maybe, somewhere in here if we count green roofs, roof gardens, and eco-roofs all together. But we need to get beyond this range. And remember, my numbers for just the Central East Side and the Pearl was in the 7 million square foot range by 2030. So there's certainly no reason why we couldn't get there. I put this slide up with a little bit of caution because I don't want this to be about a race with other cities. It's really about the quality of life in Portland. It's really about the resilience of Portland to deal with climate change and to create a place where people want to come because it's attractive, because the work that we do is attractive, because our commitments and our values are attractive. That's more important to me than whether or not we beat Chicago or DC. But to some extent, we need to be competing with Chicago and DC for the same population of folks who are going to make this place economically viable over time. And so the extent to which we want to attract young, idealistic, ecologically conscious citizens to Portland, then green roofs play a part in that as well. Now, up until now, at least for me, most of the arguments around doing any of this stuff has to do with the environment, and climate change in particular, and CO2. But it really hasn't been enough to really convince folks to make an investment, even with $5 per square foot. It's not enough that we're losing our oysters because of CO2 pollution, or the lodgepole pine because of the propagation of pine beetles, or even that our allergy season is worsening because of climate change, or that Mount Hood's glaciers are disappearing. None of this is all, really heavy stuff, but it's not urgent enough. This is a Gallup poll that tracks whether or not people feel, what they feel about global warming, and 52%, roughly in the high 40s, low 50s, believe that it's already begun. But we got like 15% who don't think it'll ever happen, and even this is not enough to raise the level of urgency to a point where people will take action. This chart shows that while people generally might think that global warming will harm plants and animal species, only 32% think that it'll harm me personally. A real lack of systems thinking about the connection in an ecosystem between these plants and my health, or my ability to earn a living even. This is a serious problem. We're not going to get to the urgency, at least from the argument around climate action, which is a major driver for the Ecoroof program, if we've got people, less than a third of folks motivated personally in some way. And when I was doing this, I was at the Living Future conference recently in Portland, and someone said something that just blew me away. So, got a question: what do these two things have in common? Anyone want to venture a guess about what these two things have in common? Pardon?
Very little.
Very little? Actually, very much. Yeah? Well, that's true. Yeah. Pardon? They both need air. You're getting there. Yeah. Anything else? Pardon? Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Any other ideas? They have to be self-sufficient. Time? Okay. Oh, Jesus. Okay. So I'll tell you the idea that was playing in my head. They're both life support systems that are reliant on finite resources, that have a finite ability to process waste. And without them, we're dead. That blew me away. I remember when this photograph came out in the late 60s, early 70s from the Apollo flights, and it was so cool to see the Earth, and it really focused the environmental movement. But I don't think it was as profound as this notion that, I didn't, at least for me, bridge to this notion that, oh my God, it's really like a spacesuit. And if we screw it up, we're dead. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to get from here to here based on those arguments alone. We need to do more. So what do we need? We need leadership. And here's Ken Kesey, my hero, saying that, leadership is about going to a place, planting a flag, and making the case. And, for me, that's what a citywide standard for new flat roof construction is all about. It's saying, this is important to the quality of life in this community. It's time to do it. We're going to do it. Who that leadership is might be in this room. certainly is in the community somewhere, maybe all of us. But we definitely need to be able to be that bold and say, this is important, and make the case for why it's that important. We need partnerships and liquid networks. This is a coral reef. There's a guy, Steve Johnson, who wrote a book on innovation that is absolutely brilliant and talks about coral reefs. I used to joke that BES actually is like a coral reef. It's not really a bureaucracy. At least I never thought of it as a bureaucracy. This group here is a coral reef. This group here is a liquid network, and we need to grow it. We need to expand it. We need to engage. This is a symbol that I put together from the Marketplace Project, where we need to increase the number of people who discover this issue and learn about it and act on it, and most importantly, share it. We have to all be about helping people discover, learn, act, and share if we're going to move this. And acting and sharing may be political. It may not be actually investing in a roof itself. We need to reframe the message. So here's this problem that we have with people's perception about global warming, and I immediately thought about Maslow's hierarchy. And the problem is that we haven't made the problem urgent enough that people see it as a risk to their basic needs. We need to make the case for that in some way. We need to reframe, but we need to reframe it in positive ways. So protecting public health, making society and the economy more resilient, increasing operating efficiencies. And for businesses, it's about differentiating yourself from your competitors. It's about improving your brand to attract new employees and customers. It's about exploiting market opportunities. And it's about driving innovation. And this is a friend of mine, Bob Barman, who lives in Lake Oswego, owns a bunch of gas stations. And this is sort of the symbol of what I mean by this. This guy took a gas station in Beaverton, put an Ecoroof and solar collectors on it. He's got an electric car charging station on this thing. And this guy has totally adopted a whole new way of differentiating his business. And then finally, we need to grow the capacity, collaboration, and the technologies that are needed to move to broad-based adoption. And that's really what this symposium is about. I'm going to leave you with one challenge. You have to raise your hand and promise to do this. During the course of this day, you need to connect up with 3 people you don't know right now. And a month from now, you need to have coffee with them, and each of you need to bring another person who is new to this field. We need to propagate the ideas around eco-roofs and the idea around how to accelerate eco-roof installation in Portland. I want you to pledge that you will, first of all, connect with 3 people you do not know in this room today, share your business cards, pass on your digits, whatever, and then get together and continue this conversation. It's absolutely important. So thank you very much. Thanks. Let me get out of your hair.
Okay. As Dan is taking care of what I should be taking care of. Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks. At lunch, we're going to have breakout sessions, and you can fulfill the pledge that Dan is talking about. We're all going to be together in 4 different groups and have a chance to really discuss a lot of these issues that are being brought up by the different speakers as well as others.